Hello and welcome to this live stream by the News Minute, where we're going to look at the Andhra Pradesh results. The entire day we've been bringing you live with four other news organizations: News Laundry, Scroll, Caravan, and The Wire. That live got over, and we thought that we have to bring you the coverage from Andhra Pradesh. We did that for Karnataka and Telangana. Joining me is my colleague Pooja Prasanna, also Janvi, who heads our Hyderabad bureau, Bala, one of our senior most reporters who heads features in the News Minute, Anjana and Bhavani. In fact, all four of them, I think, no, or not all four, three of them, except Bala, have reported from Andhra Pradesh. Bala has largely been based out of Hyderabad. So the big news really is, of course, known that Chandrababu Naidu will be back as the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh for the fourth time. And what is it? What are the numbers now? What are the latest numbers? Did Jagan Mohan's party YSRCP manage to get more than 18 seats, Anjana? Because when I asked TDP leaders, they said our victory is no longer the issue. The issue is whether Jagan will become the opposition party. You need 10% of seats of the assembly to become the opposition party. What are the numbers now, Anjana?
As of now, the numbers are TDP has over 120 odd seats. Janasena has 17 to 18 seats, and YSRCP, I think, has managed to cobble together like 14 to 16 seats. That's the number which it's been
That means
changing
that means
continually.
YSRCP will not be even the opposition party in the Andhra Pradesh Assembly. Imagine Jagan Mohan Reddy had a huge mandate in 2019. He was not able to retain it. Not just that, but he's going to come back as a small party, 15 members. Maybe it may even go up a little. But what really went wrong? I'm going to start with Pooja. Pooja, you have followed Jagan Mohan Reddy's political career from the time that you were in television to now. And even while covering elections, we got this feeling that the anti-incumbency is not that strong, right? But clearly we misread it. So what do you think went wrong on the ground?
Tanya, I spoke to a couple of people who work with, YSRCP, who are working with Janasena, and some of them who also work with Congress. They think that the swing vote, the undecided vote of about 10 to 12%, they decided en masse to vote for the coalition, whichever party of the coalition, but either TDP or Janasena or even perhaps BJP. That was a big factor. Now, what worked against YSRCP? One, jobs. Many people still had to travel and they were living in Hyderabad and other parts of Telangana when the campaign was on. So when they came back home, they spoke about how Telangana has progressed, how Andhra has been left behind, and that many people think could have influenced a few other people into thinking that Jagan Mohan Reddy had actively blocked any kind of development by not
Yeah.
deciding on one capital and keeping this entire capital issue in limbo.
So I want to start from the capital issue which Pooja spoke about, Janvi. How big was that uncertainty a problem for people in Andhra Pradesh? In fact, I spoke to Nara Lokesh. I texted him just before we came for the live, and he said that our first focus will be on announcing Amaravati as a capital and decentralization of power. Will that be a huge relief to the people of Andhra Pradesh that capital, whether it's going to be a good or bad exercise, but at least the exercise is back on track?
Since we've been covering Amaravati since the previous election, also when they stopped all the works, even then, often it was projected as a statewide issue, but we often felt like it was centered towards certain affected people around Vijayawada, Guntur, and probably other people don't care about it as much. Uh, so possibly even now the highest stakes are with a small chunk of people, but just in rhetoric and narrative, right? Like there are so many. It's a constant point that's brought up culturally also that we are so directionless. Main example, we don't even have a capital. So just as a symptom of sort of misgovernance and directionless governance, and that would probably be mitigated if like a lot of pockets of jobs and investments and urbanization in some form would have happened in even if they had followed the decentralization principle, not just in law but in implementation, and just done things in Vizag, like even if it's like superficial elements of urbanization, none of that, nothing visible or tangible people feel has happened in terms of those typical indicators of growth other than welfare.
Hmm.
So
No
capital.
indicators of growth, especially in urban areas, not even superficial indicators, is what John is saying. Bala, I want to come to you now. This victory in Andhra Pradesh, is that also a caste consolidation? Pavan Kalyan being the man who brings together TDP and BJP, Kammas and Kapus coming together with TDP and Janasena. Tell me about Pavan Kalyan. What has his arrival into this alliance, or rather, him bringing together this alliance? What difference did it make, and what is the caste consolidation here?
Then yeah, we can totally with certainty can tell that this is nothing but a social engineering process where both communities, the Kammas and Kapus, have combined forces to defeat Jagan Mohan Reddy. And to what extent Pawan Kalyan played the role, I think looking at the sheer numbers, now he's projected to win all the 21 seats which he's contested. Look at the strike rate of it. It just tells that Pawan Kalyan has been a huge factor to this alliance, and whatever I mean, the TDP was always previously also we discussed about how it was never an end game for TDP because it's a cadre based party, right? So, but what Pawan Kalyan offered to that party was some momentum. He gave that momentum among the youth, which helped, in setting the narrative that to fight a larger evil, we have to cobble up alliances. And Pawan Kalyan even went to extent of sacrificing large chunk of his own seats. Possibly, if they had demanded more seats and had a fallout, probably things would have been different. But Pawan Kalyan understood the gravity of this election. He understood that he has to make a sacrifice, and now he's now poised to become we don't know what exactly, but he's
No, I
definitely is
don't. I,
going to.
I don't know what will Pavan Kalyan become, Anjana, Deputy Chief Minister. But I can remember our conversations a few years ago, Bala, where Bala, I was still somebody who believed the Janasena will at some point of time become an important political entity, and a lot of them said no, but you have to give it to Pavan Kalyan at least for persistence, definitely for persistence. Anjana, what is the JSP looking at now?
JSP for the foreseeable future is going to try, I think in the immediate future, they're going to ensure that they have 2 or 3 decent cabinet posts at the very least. That is something they will be looking at. And in whatever capacity they can extend support to the BJP at the center, that is something they'll be doing. Within the state, cabinet posts is something, 2 or 3 at the very least is something I expect them to look at. Now, in the longer term, I realistically don't see the alliance sticking together for a very long time. What I think will be
What prediction is that? And Bhavani sitting next to you is laughing. Bhavani, do you agree with that? That the alliance will not stick together?
We were just discussing that Pawan Kalyan will not let that happen. He will stick to NDA and he will persist.
No, but see,
Naidu will stay.
the point is actually TDP does not need either BJP or Janasena to maintain power in the state, but the BJP needs the TDP at the center to maintain power. So, Bhavani, what are you all picking up from people you're speaking to from local channels? TDP is definitely going to stick on to the NDA, right? For now.
Yes, yes. Ma'am, this was the same reason why Naidu came out of the alliance in 2018, just before elections, and now he's coming back, and people are looking forward for the special status category. This time they have to do something about it. Jagan also came with the same promise. This time they can't let it go, and they maybe for that reason at least he has to stick to NDA.
Hmm.
I think that will be a sorry if I
The
could just
pound of flesh, right? I was going to come to you for that, Pooja. The pound of flesh, which I feel TDP is going to ask for now, is special status. Nothing less, nothing more. Give that money. I mean, special status in whatever other way you call it. But this is what Naidu will demand. And Pooja, give us also the national picture, right? Modi is now dependent on Nitish Kumar and Naidu, two very temperamental politicians who have left NDA and then come back. Imagine the irony here.
I want to remind people that in 2018, when Naidu walked out of the alliance, he made some very scathing remarks against Modi personally. In fact, he's gone on record to call him a terrorist. So it's not an easy alliance. And like you rightly said, they're very temperamental, they're very mercurial, and if I may say, highly unreliable, because they walked in and out of alliances with ease, and each time they found a way of justifying it. And somehow they find a way, because the seasoned politicians, they rise, they're phoenixes, they come out, and you can't ever write them off. So, this time BJP is heavily relying on Naidu. Naidu does not need them, except for the fact that he may want to keep Prime Minister Modi happy, because he wants to get that special category status. And this time, there is no excuse at all, because you can actually hold them hostage and say, if you don't give the special category status, we'll walk out and pull down your government. Because last time around, there was a clear majority BJP had. Only BJP and Prime Minister Modi and his team were calling shots. This time, Naidu can actually say that I will hold you to ransom and you have to give this to my state. So we'll have to see how they will take out. Now, what I am interested in seeing, if that was to happen, who will get the credit? Will BJP want to take that credit and, in extension, try to grow their party for real in Andhra Pradesh, or will Naidu get the sole credit for it? That is something in the long run I'd be interested in seeing. But Danya, I just want to quickly add a couple of things. We're forgetting that in the build-up there were a whole bunch of things that happened. Apparently, there was an undercurrent of many people, many men, being angry with the liquor situation in Andhra Pradesh. One is that you don't get good quality liquor; it's very difficult to get it, and also, the prices are extremely high. These are some of the factors.
While the women are upset that there is not enough, liquor recall, and that the government itself is not doing anything, for liquor prohibition.
Nothing happened after that. So the women are upset about that, and men, meanwhile, many of them were upset that you're getting very bad quality liquor, and you have to travel to neighboring states to buy liquor in town at exorbitant prices. This apparently was one huge undercurrent, along with
Bhavani, you were doing a story on liquor, right? Was this a sentiment that you?
The only thing that Jagan could not do, he promised under Navratnalu, is prohibition of liquor. But the only thing he couldn't do
So
was
the women were upset because liquor was not prohibited, and men were upset that they were not getting liquor.
That's true.
Because the liquor prices are very high in Andhra Pradesh.
The quality, it's all the local distilleries. The usual brands you get in other states are not available in Andhra, and it's a huge problem. And there are many tourist spots also in Andhra, particularly.
Also, the other thing was that the quality of liquor wasn't very good, in the sense that people actually started falling sick. Now, we weren't able to verify this by and large, but there were several people I spoke to in Vizag, several local leaders I spoke to in Vizag, who ended up telling me that, listen, this is an actual thing. It's amusing to talk about it because the men speak about brands and the women speak about how their husbands are turning into badly behaved men. But at the heart of it, this is also becoming a health crisis. So that actually did turn out to be a problem, that this was very poor quality liquor.
In fact, this is something which, for example, DMK will have to watch out in Tamil Nadu. Pooja, what was the second point? You were saying that there were a lot of undercurrents, right? We cut you off. Now get on with the undercurrents.
The second point was about women. Because of the welfare schemes that particularly targeted women, it was somewhere taken for granted that they will end up voting for YSRCP, much like what we've seen in Karnataka and maybe even Telangana, where Congress won many votes from the women. But apparently, some of the remarks that YSRCP leaders have made against women. One is Chandrababu Naidu's wife. It was extremely heart-wrenching. This was where he even cried because he felt extremely humiliated the way his wife was treated by YSRCP. And the second was how even Sharmila was treated. Some of the YSRCP leaders on ground made some very, very sexist, misogynistic remarks against Sharmila. And this apparently left a bad taste in the mouth. And the women didn't act, those who did benefit also didn't vote for Jagan's party in as many numbers as they would have anticipated. Maybe our reporters on the ground.
So because we're talking about women, I have a question for Janvi and then to Bala. Just take it one after the other. Janvi, my question to you is one word which Pooja used, that perhaps women voters were taken for granted by the YSRCP. That, look, I'm giving you this much welfare, and I have ensured that this has reached you. Therefore, what about what I get back, right? And Bala, to you, the question I want to ask, again connected to women voters, something that Jagan Mohan Reddy has been always saying is that I brought aspirational value. I brought English education. And for that, families, especially women, would be happy with the government. But did both these not work? Janvi, tell us about welfare, and Bala, tell us about education.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, the welfare was directed at women, right? And the campaigning, the promotional material, everything was like Jagan is like your brother and he will take care of women. And even the Ammavadi would go to women, I mean, the mothers and things like that. So yeah, it did look like they were taking I mean, it was a given for them, like whatever happens or doesn't happen, the women are on our side. But yeah, like you said, the misogyny is on one side, and also a lot of other things, right? Like even Anganwadi workers are women, and there was such a huge protest by them seeking hiking pay, and even other teachers and a lot of other groups
And they use harsh
comprising.
sections against the, yeah, they use harsh
Correct, yeah,
sections
yeah.
against Anganwadi workers.
Yeah, and they finally decided to call in the emergency act and like decided to strongly curb the protests. And yeah, so I mean, just welfare is not.
The ESMA, I remember asking Sajjala Ramakrishna Reddy of the YSRCP, why did you use ESMA against Anganwadi? He said, we are not the first government to do it. But after the protests were over, we took it back. That was what he said. Now, I have to leave this live. Pooja will take over the live. We'll, of course, go to Bala on the education story. But before that, just before saying bye to the audience, remember, we are an ad-free, sponsor-free platform. The News Minute is an ad-free, sponsor-free platform. That's why you're not seeing any ads when you put our YouTube videos. That's because we depend upon readers and subscribers. So during this election, though we were bombarded from all sides, trolled, harassed, etc., we stuck on to what we saw on the ground, and we reported that without fear or prejudice. So do support media houses like ours. Over to you, Bala, and thank you very much, Pooja.
Uh, so should I? Regarding the education part, actually, large sections of Dalits were very happy about the reform which Jagan was going to bring. It was, but unfortunately, the narrative, like of bringing, this kind of progressive politics, declined to regressive politics in the aftermath of Chandrababu Naidu's arrest, everything. So that kind of that narrative of being Jagan being a vengeful politician, and him coming from a factionist family, this claims of him being a factionist, all that took over. So in this in this environment, this agenda of education, other things didn't really was in the part of the news cycle anymore. And the YSRCP also didn't try to bring back this agenda on the forefront of their election campaign. So I think that really affected them.
Well, no,
One
but
more
it's
thing, if I may quickly add,
yes,
Pooja.
yes, yeah.
As far as education is concerned, there are a couple of things which I think have gone unnoticed for the most part. Teachers' unions, like solid teachers' unions in Andhra Pradesh, have held 27 rounds of talks with the education minister, with Boccha Satyanarayana, over the last 2 years after COVID, basically. And they've tried to bring up several issues they had. One was the fact that the syllabus was changed time and again, right? It went from CBSE to IB to TOEFL to IB. Then the other thing which teachers brought up was, listen, we are overburdened because so many kids have now started learning English, which we understand is a good policy. We aren't able to teach it because instead of, let's say, you had 4 classes a day, now you have 8 to 9 classes a day. And that is an incredibly heavy burden on the teachers. Across India, what teachers and several others have been protesting for is the old pension scheme, which is also true here. So there are different reasons why teachers are against the YSRCP. So do parents view this as a good deal? I'm not sure, because on one hand, they might be, there is aspiration, right? And they are happy about it. But at the other time, they're realizing that teachers aren't able to, because of, they're the victims of the circumstance, because of limitations of time, energy,
So there
just,
was a gap in
you know,
implementation, although the parents were happy that their kids might get
yeah,
to learn English
there is,
because it is
correct.
a life skill. in today's
It
day.
is a life skill. And it's not like the
It is
people
not
aren't
being
qualified to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like they aren't qualified to do it. It just so happens that there are only so many kids you can teach. And teachers, that is one of the major issues which they struggle with. So I
No, I
don't know to
want
what extent it panned out. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get to the point of how much did Chandrababu Naidu's arrest change the narrative? Maybe Janvi can come in on this first, because till then many people still thought that there is no anti-incumbency against Jagan. There's no real anger against Jagan. More than the arrest, do you think, Janvi, the manner in which he was arrested, right, where he was almost manhandled, there were cops surrounding his house. They tried to pick him up in the middle of the night. They resisted. Did that somewhere help TDP and Naidu kind of revive themselves? Is that a factor you think?
I think that's what we all expected to happen. Also, we expected a lot of people to come out on the streets and protest. But honestly, at that point, even when I went home to like near Hindupur, and even in Hyderabad, like there were protests, there were organized protests, but mostly it was hardcore TDP workers. It's not like the general people were coming out onto the streets. Uh, but I think that that sort of like that sympathy, which I think sort of started when he walked out of assembly and cried and said he would re-enter only after winning, after becoming the chief minister again, right? That was, I think, one dramatic, like one key moment. And in the arrest also, I think it slowly built up over time, like as the debates on the case happened. And the case itself is quite confusing, so I think it's hard to take sides without like really understanding. But I think media narrative also sort of settled slowly into saying that they didn't have enough against Naidu to confine him for so long, and also the duration kept prolonging, and then all the solidarity that Pawan Kalyan showed, all of this I think was like key moments which slowly shifted the tide. And also it was difficult to understand back then because, like I said, a lot of these protests were being organized by like proper TDP supporters and communities that have traditionally supported them. But
Yeah, but maybe people didn't come out on the roads to protest because they
exactly,
don't
yeah,
care
but
enough to come out. But the fact that there were protests would have probably had some sort of an influence on the
yeah. There were
undecided
daily
vote.
reminders. Even a month after his arrest, like I was just walking around like Hindupur, and almost daily they would be at the NTR statues and all. People would gather and make noise and
Yeah,
make sure people
I
don't
Yeah,
forget.
January, but that Hindupur cannot be taken as because it's already a TDP home turf, and always Pooja talks
Yeah.
about optics. I usually the way he was arrested is a huge optic. They definitely put an impression. Even Pawan Kalyan was not allowed to meet. He had to stop in the outskirts. Everything. If
You have
there's no
passed
anti
to enter it, he
yeah,
said,
So that
all that.
brings me
yeah,
to my
at
next
the
point.
night
I was
time.
watching a couple of national channels, and I heard an anchor say that is arrogance the biggest loser this election. I want to bring it to the Andhra context. Did people perceive Jagan to be excessively arrogant and high-handed? Was that a factor? Let's start with Bala. He's been quiet for a bit.
I mean, I can it was certainly that's what Jagan did not try to redeem that image at all. Like KCR, who despite being receiving criticism of him being a feudal lord, he didn't. In fact, he doubled down on that kind of image. Similarly, Jagan also did not. In fact, that entire arrest of Naidu, the kind of aggressive politics which he played, it it just showed that at any point he was not willing to go back on it. He was not now most of the most of the exit polls were wrong, but in the exit polls some of them made good points about like why is there likely that TDP is going to make inroad, get back to power, because one factor they said that many of them pointed was the arrest of Chandrababu Naidu. It shows that Jagan grossly, and history has proved that you can't go after someone and make them a victim. And if the public, if you are giving such a perception, creating such a perception, the public is not going to stand against you, no matter what kind of welfare schemes you promise, because I mean, they see you as a villain,
As a
and
vindictive person.
I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of reliance they will have on such a leader that he won't come after you at a later time.
Yeah.
So
But I want to take
small
your point
interjection there. Small
just a
thing.
minute, Anjana,
He
you
wasn't
want
considered. I'm so sorry.
Anjana,
I just wanted to
before I
say.
come to you, I want to remind our viewers that we don't do surveys, we don't do exit polls, and we stuck to our guns. And we had a large team of reporters. Many of them are joining us live today. Tanya was in Andhra Pradesh. She traveled through the length and breadth of the state. We tried to bring you stories. We focused on what the people really want. We didn't get into this business of predicting, 1 or 2 days before. But if you like this kind of journalism, then you make sure that right now, as you're watching us, go and become a paid TNM subscriber. Because at the end of the day, if you want unsponsored journalism, where we don't rely on governments or their proxies, which are corporates, then we have to make sure you have our back. Before I hand it over to you, Anjana, I also wanted to quickly get in a point from Janvi. You were saying something about how Jagan was seen as a vindictive person. And I think that has somewhere been a common thread from the beginning, right? This entire not deciding on Amravati as a capital also had some shade of vindictiveness where he didn't want to hand it to Naidu because that was Naidu's dream project. And it was
Yeah.
okay, people suffered at the end of the day, the state suffered, but we cannot have Naidu's legacy continued. That was almost like a pattern,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, in fact, when he came to power, one of the major terms was reverse tendering. So he was canceling tenders of all major projects and then giving the tender to someone else. And again, like people saw this as wasteful and I think petty and pointless, sort of like, okay, you go after the opposition, but like let's get something out of it. So I think a lot of people saw these things, the Polavaram retendering and everything, as sort of already much delayed things getting further delayed. Amaravati, again, like, I mean, it wasn't entirely indecisive. Like within less than a year, he did say that we'll have three capitals. And to be fair, they seemed to have clear points to support their proposal. But again, like the indecision, right? Like, I mean, because clearly for 4 years since 2020, since COVID, they kept saying we'll move to Vizag, and it was always one more month, one more month, one more month, and it never happened. So in the meanwhile, they did at one point say that we will develop Amravati into a food processing hub, and it'll, that will happen. But that also didn't happen. So exactly, like it's like he want. It almost looked like they didn't want Amravati to become anywhere near the vision that was projected before they came to power. And again, like all these uh, I mean, even before Naidu's arrest, a lot of TDP supporters were arrested over social media posts. And there was one instance where the CID, served a notice to a very elderly woman over
Yeah.
some WhatsApp forward. So all of
Yeah.
these instances also, I think, and in
And we've
general,
done a
everyone.
story, if I remember, Paul Newman, our previous colleague, had done a story, a detailed story, and we try and put out that link on how many of these political arrests were, completely baseless on very flimsy and bizarre grounds. That is something we
Yeah.
can replug. Before I get a stinker from Anjana on WhatsApp, I'll let her speak.
Uh,
Cut her off there. Anjana, go
No,
ahead.
no, no stinker. Okay, I just disagree with what Bala had to say earlier, and I don't think what was the word which was used? People saw Jagan as what was the word which was used?
Vengeful person, is it not?
Vengeful completely. Not just, it wasn't just that he's unfair. They didn't just see him as an unfair person because the moniker which was attached to the chief minister was psycho. They saw him as unhinged. Now, I don't want to get into the political language which undercut the entire state politics,
Yeah,
but
we don't
the
endorse using a term about mental health so loosely, but you can talk about the
yeah, we
rationale.
don't. We
Yeah.
don't. But where it comes from is the fact that he flipped through one policy after the other very, very quickly. Education, we've already spoken about. It has changed supremely. Capital was entirely a different decision. He had, like a lot of Amravati farmers we met, spoke about how initially he was okay with Amaravati as the capital, and it was a very brief moment that he was all right with it. Then he said he would go for a three capital formula, and that changed, and then he shifted to Vizag. his idea of welfare has also changed continually. And his entire economic policy has been one of saying that we will look at welfare and we will look at ensuring that MSMEs are fine. But getting an investment otherwise is not like important, which is a really strange position for an Andhra Pradesh chief minister to take, considering that the state has had very little investment, especially after it lost Hyderabad. So
Right.
if you put all these things together, it wasn't a very straightforward, clear, logical pursuit of how he looked at policy, how he looked at even welfare, which is what, like, I think really ended up affecting him. He came across, I think, as a little reckless. So since we don't want to accuse him of not being sane, what we can say is that he wasn't very careful and methodical, which is exactly
He
what you would expect
seemed
a chief
decisive,
minister
but
to
at
be.
the same time, he kept flipping, which was essentially indecisiveness. But last comment, I want to start off with
Right.
Anjana because I know that one of her pet peeves is this, turning cities and states into Singapore. But on a larger point, Anjana, do you think now that Naidu is back in power and he has, he's in alliance with the NDA? Do you see more development coming to Andhra Pradesh? Do you see more projects being, granted, be it, central government schemes or in terms of private investments coming back to Andhra Pradesh? Do you see that happening?
I do. While there are other things which I would probably say YSRCP does better than the TDP, I have no doubt in my mind that as far as investments were concerned, TDP will do a good job. Right after the bifurcation of state, which is something people in Anantapur still speak about, he managed to get Kia Motors. So they keep speaking about how he managed to get a completely foreign entity to come and invest in Anantapur, which is bare bones doesn't begin to describe the district, right? Like there is very little fertility. It's a very small town, 200 things which come up. However, I will say one thing in
But it's
Jagan's
close
defense
to
and then I'll stop
Bangalore. I'm
talking.
sure that is a factor.
It was a factor. No, we know it was a factor because TDP people told us that it was a factor, just like promoting electronics in Chittoor was a factor because Tamil Nadu, right? Because of the border there. So these were factors. So in that capacity, TDP was a little more organized in terms of how they approached investment, no doubt about that. That being said, I think the people who stuck with YSRCP stuck with him because of COVID, in the sense that the welfare helped during COVID, which I'm not confident the TDP will have been able to do because Mr. Naidu has always had an anti welfare policy. Not that it's just not how he approaches policy and governance. Now, whether right or not is a different conversation. That's not how he's looked at it. So, given the circumstances and considering Jagan technically had only 2.5 years to rule properly, the rest was a pandemic. There wasn't much he could do after a point. I think, in terms of ensuring that people didn't die of hunger, people got basic access to decent healthcare. Those were things which were taken care of well. But that is where it stops also. Education was mismanaged, jobs were mismanaged. Those were things which came up. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting point. Again, talking futuristically, I wonder what happens to those, warm, good relations that, Prime Minister Modi and Jagan, shared because there were these photo ops every now and then where they're warmly smiling at each other, they're giving each other statues. Now that, Jagan doesn't have too many numbers that he can help, BJP with in either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, will that warmth continue or will it turn bitter? We'll have to see that. But I want last comment from Janvi on whether the economy of the state can see a revival because we know that with the special category status not coming in, that special package didn't do enough, and the fact that there wasn't a comprehensive development plan, it was dire straits, right? Because people were still having to travel to other states for jobs. Do you see that turning now over the next 5 years?
Um, I mean, with my limited understanding, at least on paper, the state's finances have been, I think, since bifurcation, both states, Andhra and Telangana, haven't been doing very well, and a lot of people tend to blame them on like welfare-heavy governance. And Naidu is someone who's known for a CEO style of governance or whatever, right, and managing to get investments no matter what. So, I mean, it does look like. Because they have also already been talking about the kind of investments they would like to bring and everything. So, uh, that is a direction things could go in. But again, like I mean, it's not like they can stop this welfare completely. Also, they have also promised things like free bus rides and everything. So, uh, yeah, it's. I don't think it's very easy to solve this mess.
Yeah, Pooja, we have to remember that this is not to completely do away with the welfare schemes at all, because in fact, I mean, we are like we are forgetting that amongst the most the reason why TDP also came back to power is like their promise of this super six schemes. So this scheme is something it promises three free cylinders to the women, free bus rides, which free bus rides, and it has promises to have 20,000 jobs. So it has many such good schemes promised by the TDP alliance.
First
So in
thing,
a
maybe
sense,
they
it's
have to figure
competitive
out the
welfareism,
capital.
right? Yeah,
Um,
no, but
they-
it's a good thing if you look at it holistically. Competitive welfareism is good because at the end of the day, it's going back to the people, right? At the end of the day, people can then say, "This is what we need," and whoever can give us that will get our votes instead of it being personality centric. Speaking of which, I want to come to Bhavani for my last question. Uh, the cult personality politics in the Telugu states will continue, right?
yeah.
That does not change with these election results because Pawan Kalyan and Naidu
Uh,
were central figures, right? Do you see that changing? Do you see more focus on policies, perhaps, or that's not changing anytime soon?
the final voting takes place on the face value of the politicians, and this election proved it increased more. Exponentially increased with the Pawan Kalyan in the race, and even Naidu coming back. This proves that Andhra is not moving away, but still on the ground it seems like issues like all what my colleagues spoke about, capital or unemployment, they're still there. The leaders have to, it's about the leaders who already have the support of the people, who have to figure out what the people of the state are expecting. It's not just their whole like if it is a whole, if it is only a face value, the Pawan Kalyan would have won in his first attempt, but he had been persistent for a decade now, and then now he's making his debut entry to the assembly with a huge nearly 21 of his uh, leaders, party leaders.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of haggling for cabinet berths and both in Andhra and maybe because one of the people I was speaking to from Janasena Party thought that they can actually get one cabinet berth in the next Modi government as well. We'll see how that goes. We'll continue tracking all of it, but we can just hope that for the people of Andhra Pradesh there is some certainty on what the capital will be, 3-1, whichever is the case. At least there is some direction so the people can continue moving forward. From all of us here at the News Minute, a big, big, big thank you because you have shown that you appreciate and you value our journalism, which is in public interest, not just by joining us when we do our lives like these. You've been with us since 8 a.m. today morning, but also you've contributed generously, which shows that you value that if you pay for journalism, it will be in your interest. We have young, bright reporters who've traveled through. I'm joined by 4 of them, all of them youngish, I would say. But it's a promise from us that we will continue keeping focus on Andhra Pradesh, a state that is largely ignored by most national channels, except when such situations come. We will keep speaking for the people of Andhra Pradesh. Last words, anybody has anything to say, guys, before we log off for today?
But the one thing maybe we have missed is about the kind of debt Andhra might be in, because when Jagan came, he blamed a lot on Naidu's Amravati capital, and now there's because
The
of
blame
welfare
is on
schemes,
the welfare schemes of
schemes,
YSRCP.
and also he spent on, already there's a office, CMO office in Vizag, and which he promised that I will take a oath from that building, which is not happening. The same thing happened in Telangana also. We were just discussing how the secretariat was built, and no, KCR couldn't take a oath. The same thing
Yeah, it's
repeated in
eerily
Andhra.
similar how what happened, how KCR was ousted in Telangana. Something similar has happened in Andhra
Yeah,
Pradesh as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's an
For me, I
interesting
think
comparison.
one more interesting thing is now that it is likely that Jagan might most likely lose the opposition status
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
We can. It will be interesting to see how Congress will try to fill this vacuum and come back, because since 2014 Congress has been decimated, and now this seems to be a chance for the party to because you have to remember most of the seats for the Congress used to come from Andhra Pradesh, the United Andhra Pradesh.
Correct.
Then
Correct.
now again, I think
2009 government was formed because of the numbers from Andhra Pradesh.
yeah. So
Now
now we
the
can
daughter is
see.
back on the map.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. The Andhra politics will be particularly very interesting to see how the politics is now is going to be very dynamic. It's not going to be static. So it will be very interesting to see how the Congress will try to strategize things and get going forward.
Absolutely. Last 10 years, I'd say it was up to the two regional parties to fight it out. Both the national parties, that's Congress and BJP, were in the periphery at best. Now both of them have I won't say a large presence, but they have a foot in the door. How will
Correct.
this play out? How will both the regional parties continue fighting each other? These are interesting developments. But I can say one thing for sure: after 10 years, Andhra will be relevant again in the national scheme of things. Because if Chandrababu Naidu decides to walk out, then Modi government will fall down. So once again, Andhra is now back to the rescue and will be in news regularly. We continue tracking them. Thank you for joining us today.